Hi, my name is Catherine Kilcrease, and this is my behavioral modification project. For the purposes of this project, the target behavior I chose for modification was habitually scanning my face for blemishes and inconsistencies. The modification technique I chose to address this target behavior was a system of positive reinforcement and positive punishment. I chose to implement positive punishment in order to hopefully associate an undesired outcome with engaging in the target behavior, and to also use positive reinforcement to associate a desired outcome with refraining from engaging in this target behavior. These are techniques that I've seen in the past in behavioral modification. I'm familiar with them, so I just went ahead and chose them for this habit, for this project. Oops. Okay, as far as the implementation of my technique goes, I first had to operationalize my target behavior. So I did this by defining any touching of blemishes or inconsistencies on my facial skin as one session, regardless of varying lengths of time. So whether it's just one quick touch or 30 seconds of mindless scanning, I still counted it as one session. So for every 5 sessions, I implemented positive punishment via scooping the litter box, which is what I chose for my punishment. Um, as soon as I engaged in the 5th session, I would immediately stop what I was doing and go to scoop the litter box, whether or not it needed to be done. And so if I had not engaged in any sessions by 10 p.m., I would implement positive reinforcement via an hour of guilt-free Netflix watching. I chose to to implement this reinforcement the same day, that night, in order to associate it more closely with refraining from the behavior. I felt like implementing it the next day would maybe not quite be as effective. And I chose 10 p.m. because I felt like it was a good cutoff point to where I still had the vast majority of the day to record my engagements in this behavior. So each session, each time I engaged in a session, I assigned 1 point in my data table. And then in the second row of my data table, I recorded a -1 every time positive punishment was implemented and +1 every time positive reinforcement was implemented. So in order to, as far as my graph goes, I chose to represent this data using a line graph. There were a lot of day-to-day and week-to-week fluctuations, so I felt like using a line graph from day 1 to day 42 would best visually represent these changes and my data overall. I use the orange line to represent how many daily sessions I was engaging in, how many times I was engaging in my target behavior, and the blue line represents how many times reinforcements were implemented. So a quick disclaimer, my graph does jump up and down quite a bit. And this is almost primarily due to my workplace. I work 4 days a week, and in my workplace, it's uh, pretty difficult to engage in my target behavior. So on these days, on my work days, I'm engaging in the target behavior far less than I would be in just my natural environment, just at home. But that being said, while I didn't have a major modification or change of this behavior, it is observable that as the weeks progress, from week 1 to week 6, the maximum times I'm engaging in my target behavior weekly, my weekly averages are reduced. Even if it's just by a bit, just from going from a weekly maximum of 11 to 10 to 9 to around 7, 6, 8 is what it remains for the remainder of the duration of the project. Um, while my techniques for modification maybe weren't completely effective or appropriate for this particular behavior, I do believe that just the sheer heightened awareness of my engagement in this target behavior did result in a slight reduction of how many times I'm engaging in this behavior. So while the project didn't quite wasn't quite as successful as I would have hoped, It did definitely show me what can be used and what can the most appropriate techniques to use in the future to modify this behavior.